Hi, everybody. I'm back with Dr. Manjir Samanta-Laughton, and this time I'm not with her in a cafe in London. We're doing this via Zoom across the pond, as they say, and across another continent, because I really think this is an important conversation to have now rather than wait until we can be in the same room again. Manjir, as you know, is a visionary in the field of science and has been at least a decade ahead of her time in the understanding of what black holes actually are, which is diametrically opposed to what science currently says black holes are about. In fact, she's saying it's a source of incredible flows of information from a cellular level out to a cosmic level. So let's go to Dr. Manjir right now, and we're going to take it into a whole new spin. Hi, Manjir. It's good to see you again.
Hello, good to talk to you again, Regina.
Hey, everyone loved our last conversation, and that's where you introduced the notion that black holes may be essentially emitting water. And so let's talk about the implications of that for a moment, and then we're going to go into what else they're exuding, which changes our earth science understanding drastically. So let's talk about the last step from a year or two ago about water and black holes, okay?
So a lot of people think that black holes are these great guzzling monsters. So when I've been speaking with you before, I've explained how my big insight back in, all the way back in 2003 now, was that black holes are creative. So they are bringing light from higher dimensions to the edge of our reality, to the speed of light, which I have renamed the perception horizon. And then it kind of like this light then splits into two particles, the antimatter and the matter. So it could be an electron and a positron, the two sort of mirror image particles. So that's where the theory was for a long time. And it doesn't just stick there though. It's also the two particles combine again to form a gamma ray. So it kind of breathes. But so this sort of signature is all over the universe. I find evidence of it all over the universe, from the galactic black holes that are at the center of galaxies to actually stars and sunspots and things like that. But I started to realize that they're also in the Earth's upper atmosphere. And we commonly call those, when we find these black holes, the same signature, the gamma rays, the antimatter, the electrons at almost the speed of light, because they've just slowed down. The light's just slowed down to the edge of our reality, and as the electrons come out, they come out at the speed of light because they're just slowing down to our reality. So we see that happening at every single level of the universe, and one of the most common ones that we see on our planet are called, I don't know if you can think of the name, Regina.
Right, go ahead.
They are called thunderstorms.
Yes, I remember reading your article about this. So you're saying that that thunderstorms are actually a black hole in action, which is fascinating because it's something we can see, something we can relate to. We're going to take it even further because and talk about this phenomena. But what you say that got me so jazzed the first time is that black holes are at the center of our atomic universe, at the center of atoms themselves, meaning everything is essentially has a black hole as its creative force. So let's talk about what it means in thunderstorms and then drill down.
Yes, absolutely. So when you realize that it's the same signature, this simplicity that gives infinite complexity at every single level, you then realize that these so-called terrestrial gamma ray flashes that NASA and people have been finding above, in the Earth's atmosphere for about 20 years now. They found these, what they call terrestrial gamma ray flashes, these very, very fast, bursts of energy that have happened, that happen above the clouds. and they're associated with thunderstorms. And this was a surprise to scientists, and they realized that you have, so, you know, they're the same, from my perspective, they're the same signature as you see in galactic black holes. So the things that are at the center of galaxies, you see gamma rays, you see antimatter, and you see electrons almost at the speed of light. You see the same things in thunderstorms. So you see gamma rays, terrestrial gamma ray flashes. You see antimatter. Now, I predicted this back in 2006. NASA found this in 2010. And you see electrons almost at the speed of light. We commonly call this lightning. So, you know, people, if you want to have a look, you can look it up and see that lightning is actually we don't understand it fully from a mainstream scientific perspective. People keep saying, oh, well, there's all this, like, there's all this friction there in the clouds, and that produces static. There is not nearly enough static electricity to produce lightning. Now, of course, the other element in thunderstorms is rain. A lot of the time it produces rain. Now, for many years, I was keeping it to myself thinking, that means that black holes produce water. So if I'm right, we should see water at every single level of the universe. Well, around 2011, scientists found the largest body of water ever in space, very, very deep into space. They found this enormous body of water, and guess what? It's coming out of black holes. So often it's mixed in microwaves, and you know, so we have this signature where you see water now all over space. So you know how all the scientists have been finding, you know, water on Mars, water on Enceladus, the moon. You know, they're finding water everywhere. They even found it just at the time that we're recording it, just a few weeks ago, on an exoplanet that's similar to the Earth. So this is a planet that's not even in our solar system. They've detected water. Not a surprise to me, because if you understand that the same signature is going throughout our reality, then you understand that the black hole principle itself is producing water.
I love it. Okay, so this becomes a question then. Are they always producing water? Is that a common factor that's held true to all black holes, or is it just that they're capable of producing water, some do and some don't?
That's a really good question, because, as I said at the beginning, you have this fluctuation that it goes one way and then the other. And that's what really, really puzzles the scientists. They can't understand, because their paradigm is violence. Sorry, but it is. Everything is guzzling each other, everything is colliding into each other, and everything is kind of like, you know, exploding. So they think that the gamma ray bursts are produced by explosions. So when they see this pattern where it goes blink, 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 and then even 15 years later, you could see that same supernova. They think it's a supernova, like, you know, blinking again. They don't understand it, because they're going, well, how would that still be exploding? It exploded 15 years or 50 years ago in some cases. So what it is this breathing pattern. And so that breathing pattern also applies to the water as well. And we can see this on our own planet. We call them geysers or geysers, depending on how you pronounce it. So these ejections of water that we see coming out of the Earth itself is a good example of this intermittent emission of water. And we've seen this happening on Mars, seasonal changes of water on Mars. We've seen this on, you know, moons such as Io. We've seen this on Enceladus. These ejections of water, even on our own moon, we've actually seen jets, and we've seen jets coming out of comets as well. So there's a really good question. Just like the black hole principle is intermittent and breathing, sometimes it gives off these matter and antimatter, sometimes the gamma rays, so it is with the water that it gives off as well. So it's this universe of this breathing process.
I love it. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to thunderstorms for a moment, because as you're talking, some other things are streaming into my head. Okay, you know the physicist Patrick Flanagan, right? Do you know who Patrick Flanagan is?
No, not sure.
Okay, well, he's kind of known over in the U.S. and he's this genius that was, constructing Tesla coils and like ham radios that would go thousands of miles when he's 7 years old in the garage, right?
Wow.
Anyway, his fascination really ended up being in the human body, kind of our biochemistry and how certain chemicals were affecting it. And he ended up producing a product that boosts the levels of hydrogen called H- or megahydrate. He's the inventor of megahydrate, which you'll probably run across. He's a kind of all-round genius like you. And one day I was interviewing him. I said, Patrick, science still isn't telling us what electricity is, okay? And he said, electricity. I said, what is it? He said, well, Regina, electricity is the flow of electrons from a higher potential to a lower one. In other words, from one dimension into another, right? Okay, at the same time, now talking about thunderstorms, if you can put this together and see, tell me if there is any relation to the black hole theory in this. Now, from the Hermetic text, they say that thunderstorms, the clap of the thunder and the sound that you hear is actually the annihilation or explosion when electricity is applied to the hydrogen atom or another elemental atom. We're hearing the explosion of those atoms, which is that energy that makes me run out. As soon as I see thunder and lightning, I want to be out in it because it energizes us so deeply with the release of all of that energy. How does this all play together for you?
Well, that's a really good point because accompanying some of these ejections that happen is sound. So that's what you see when, well, we hear, not just see, but I mean, we hear this hum across the universe, the heartbeat of stars, we call it. You can look up the heartbeat of stars and you find my whole blog on that. This pulse that is very similar to our own heartbeat. If you look at the ECG or EKG, as you call it, and so you have this heartbeat. So accompanying these ejections from black holes at every single level is sound, and we know this from the mystics. So whether that be the thunder that we hear associated with lightning, or the tower's hum, or things that we hear this humming from the earth, don't we? Or we hear these loud sounds. There's one major one in Russia where there was a massive explosion some years back, and it's accompanied by sound. So and we hear this just before the sun is giving off some coronal mass ejection as well. It's accompanied by sound. By the way, the sunspots also have been seen giving off water, amazingly enough. So stars also eject water, and if you Google stars eject water bullets, you'll find that reference as well. This is mainstream science. I'm not sort of this isn't wishful thinking on my part. I'm not going to hope that they find stars ejecting water. Stars are being found ejecting water. So it's part of the black hole principle. It's part of that around an ejection you'll also have sound accompanying it, whether that be a thunderstorm or a solar flare or something else into the cosmos.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your tying it all together for me because I've been thinking about it. Now we're going to go on to the sort of your latest finding, which has incredible implications. And then we're going to go into where a type of cosmic intelligence factors into this. Because the lovely theme of your black hole principle is that it is a source of creativity, replenishment, creation itself. And of course, behind creation has to be consciousness. So the latest thing, all right, for you is the notion that fossil fuels, diamonds, methane as well, are found in space, and that you believe that they're created through the black hole principle as well on Earth. Let's talk about that.
Now, I know this is going to be quite a reach for people, but just stay with me. So, having, taken on board what I've just said about the same pattern going throughout reality, earlier this year, and this is quite new for me in terms of where this area is, but I spent pretty much all year researching this and getting all the references together. So earlier this year, I was actually watching a documentary about the Gulf of Mexico, like you do. And it was talking about an asteroid impact, and that asteroid impact may even be supposedly responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. And so underwater there's this asteroid impact, and interestingly, even though it managed to hit the Earth with such force to create this impact, there's no sign of asteroid. Always the case. It's quite interesting, isn't it? But what struck me is that it was talking about the edges of the impact crater having elements that were from deep within the Earth. And then suddenly I was like, oh, okay. So that sounds more like it's coming up, like something is coming up. And one of the signatures of the black hole principle is these bipolar jets, these fine jets. Like you were always told that, black holes are, sucking in stuff, and then, like a plug hole. Well, actually, what you actually observe is that they're giving off jets, often at 180 degrees to each other, and they're fine jets. They're funneled, and we can see these jets coming off all sorts of things, from comets to even stars to even planets have been seen giving off these jets. And you were talking about the atomic level. We've seen these around quarks, from a subatomic level as well. So we see these jets at every single level. So when I thought of this, so the center of the Earth is also a black hole principle sort of center. By the way, scientists have no idea what's at the center of the planet. They make up all these things. If you want to laugh, as we say in the UK, if you want to laugh, go on YouTube and have a look at the explanations of the magnetic fields of our planet from a molten iron core, because that's what we're told. There's this molten iron core that's shifting around, that's going as these fluctuating magnetic fields. No, it's the same thing. It's a black hole principle dynamo at the center of our planet, and it produces geoneutrinos, antineutrinos, and it also produces water, the oceans. There's a few months after I predicted that, and I stated publicly at the Institute of Noetic Sciences that there was water, the water of our planet actually comes from the center of our planet. 7 months later, there was worldwide headlines saying that an ocean has been found deep beneath our planet's surface. So, all the prediction, once you know the pattern, it's easy, isn't it? You can actually start to predict. And and by the way, this was given to me in a vision. I'm not sitting here like I'm a clever cogs, or whatever. It is coming through me. The vision was given to me, and from that one moment back in 2003, I'm getting all of this information. So that's how I'm able to predict these things. So with the Earth, the center of the Earth is also working using this black hole principle, and that gives us, volcanoes. It gives us all of these things. So what I realized is there must have been some major energy ejection causing the asteroid crater, and that is like a black hole principle event. But what do we have around the Gulf of Mexico? We have oil, lots and lots of oil. And so suddenly I started to think, gosh, what if oil is actually not from fossils like we've been taught, but actually is part of the black hole principle process, that along with water, it produces lots and lots of different elements, and somehow either they're produced sort of in the higher realms, as it were, or as geometries in the higher realms that come to our realms below the speed of light, or they're actually separate elements that are assembled after they've come to our dimension. I don't know for sure which one, but what I realize is it's this process that comes from the black hole principle itself. And I thought to myself, if I am right, then oil should be found all over space. Because if it's something that is a universal process, then we should find it not only on this planet, where it's supposed to have come from plankton and all sorts of things and cooked up over millions of years. They tell us that story, don't they, when you're in school and you get to do all these sort of cycles and stuff.
So it went from rotting things, yes, over a long period of time, heated up and compressed.
Even though nobody's managed to reproduce this in the lab, but never
Right.
mind.
Yeah.
We can produce biomass fuels and things like that, but the actual process of making crude oil, nobody's ever managed to do. So the excuse is, well, we haven't got enough time, we haven't cooked it for long enough, the pressures aren't high enough. So in this narrative, give it enough time and anything's possible. So it's very interesting that when I went to look for it, suddenly I found that oil has been found all over, not just our solar system, all over the universe. In fact, the biggest oil well ever is coming very close to the Horsehead Nebula. And I thought, it's not enough, it's not enough. And then, of course, we know, you might have seen the headlines, that the biggest oil wells in the solar system are on Titan, which is one of Saturn's moons. We've pay dirt on Mars. We found kerogen, which is, a type of sort of the precursor to crude oil on Mars. So these are not artifacts. People have tested it, and they're not artifacts. So we're finding oil literally all over the universe. And I thought, no, that's still not good enough. I have to find something that specifically references the galactic center. And would you believe it? I found it. There's some scientists that have found that Greece comes out of the galactic center. So we have been finding organic chemicals in space for a long time, but now we can see that this is actually a process associated with the galactic center. It is, this is not me finding it. I haven't got a telescope. I have to go on the ways that these astrophysicists are actually finding these things, but they have no idea why, and then it's like, okay, that's oil. There's other things that we call fossil fuels. What about coal? And, coal, this book is absolutely fantastic, by the way, The Deep Hot Biosphere, by a physicist called Thomas Gold, who's no longer with us. Total visionary. And it's called The Myth of Fossil Fuels. So he goes into great depth of why fossil fuels don't look like fossils. He doesn't go into the black hole aspect, but if you want to look at all the the way that we started to get the idea anyway, it was like anything. It was a theory that was put forward, and it just got taken up because there was nothing else that was around. So people got really wedded to this idea that coal and oil and methane were all fossils, and fossil fuels, So basically, the coal idea, coal, interestingly, is often found associated with oil on this planet. So there's something going on there, because it's like, well, isn't coal supposed to come from trees? And, the plankton, it sort of doesn't make sense how the oil and coal are so closely associated. So again, there's a hint that some other process is going on. And Thomas Gold talks about the upwelling theory, that it's actually coming from deep within the earth, not coming down from the trees and the swamps and things. It's actually lots of evidence to show it's coming up. He doesn't talk about the black holes, but he's showing all the evidence that it's actually coming from down below upwards to the surface of the planet. So I was thinking, okay, if I'm right, then you should be able to find coal in space. And that sounds absolutely crazy, but guess what? We found coal in space, and a professor in Hong Kong has actually found coal being ejected out of stars so rapidly. He's saying to us, because he's wedded to that theory as well, he's going, well, we know coal occurs on Earth over millions of years from trees, so how is it that these stars are ejecting coal so rapidly? And if you want any of these references, please go to the article that I've written, which is drmanjir.com/fossil. And I put all of the scientific references into a blog. So there's drmanjir.com/fossil. So I just want to make sure that this is all reference. This isn't stuff that I'm just pulling out. So And it goes further. And so when I realized, reading Thomas Gold's book, that he talks about these kimberlite funnels. So these are these places like in South Africa, they're very, very narrow pipes, these kimberlite pipes, where diamonds are sometimes found. So diamonds, obviously, they're a different type of carbon. And we think that they're produced by, if you compress coal, if you compress coal enough, or you compress carbon enough, then you'll get a diamond. So I was thinking to myself, I wonder if these very, very narrow pipes, again, are ejections from black hole, and that's what's producing, in certain circumstances, the heat and the pressure is enough in the ejection that it's producing a diamond this time instead of coal. So I was thinking, if that case, diamonds should be found all over the universe. Here we go again. And so I did so, and it didn't take me long at all to find that, yes, indeed, diamonds are found all over the universe. And in fact, diamonds have been found raining down on Neptune. So I know this is going to make some of the women maybe here very, very excited at the thought.
When do we start having our private space industry, delivering us to Neptune, right, for a little mining? And mining is going to become an issue, right?
Yeah. I think, none of this at all. I'm not saying for a second that we should, let's get on our spaceships and go mine the nearest asteroid or whatever, but obviously some people are actually planning this. Some companies are actually coming up, and space mining is becoming a thing. But the thing that I'm interested in is, why are the diamonds there? Why is the coal there? Why is the oil there? There are plans to go to Titan to bring back that oil. But why is it there in the first place? It shouldn't be there, because we think that oil and coal come from living organisms that have died long ago. Well, unless you're going to say that Titan was once full of plankton and things like that, then it shouldn't be there. Methane too, or methane. We're seeing, just even the last few weeks, astronomers have been very puzzled by the fact that they can see methane plumes that are coming from Mars, and they're getting all sorts of explanations, like there's things that are under the surface that are farting, or that, I kid you not, Mars rover, Curiosity rover, is farting. And what that means is the Curiosity rover had some sort of leakage and was ejecting periodically, this gas. So basically, methane is a very simple structure, as you probably know, CH4, so you've got this combination probably coming out of the black hole and then combining, and as it does, it is being ejected just like a geyser of water, just like the gamma ray burst. Intermittent ejections from the black hole principle process, and it's at every single level. So we're seeing this on various planets, we're seeing this on Mars, and we see it in our own planet too. And an understanding of this might lead to more safety in coal mines, for example, because, as everybody knows, this intermittent gas release is what causes a lot of the dangerous situations in coal mines. So having this better understanding of the ejections of volcanoes, volcano lightning, that's a good example of the electrons coming out of a volcano, and understanding, there was one documentary I saw where they were putting water into Yellowstone, thinking it's going to calm it down. Now, you don't know what that's going to do to the black hole principle process, because you may actually be stimulated. So it has all sorts of applications, from space mining to understanding our own planet better, to understand our weather, climate change. I was probably the only person who predicted that hurricanes would also have gamma ray bursts and antimatter in them. They found that just last year, because they're the same principle. They're the same pattern as the galactic black holes in the center of a galaxy, where you see, the gamma ray burst, the antimatter and the antimatter. It's the same principle all the way down. So yeah, it's got lots and lots of different applications.
Do you care to comment before we go into, to me, another really magical area of this, which is the creative process and the notion of consciousness at the core of and permeating all of this and deriving and directing it as the organizing principle. Let's talk just for a moment. You were talking about climate change, because recently I interviewed Billy Carson on my show at Gaia. And Billy's featured on a lot of different shows. He's, again, another one of these all-round geniuses with a real particular fancy for astrophysics. And one of the things he was talking about was that we were talking about all the disruptive weather patterns that were going on at that moment and that continue with no end in sight, really. And he was saying, well, there isn't, because global warming is a feature of our entire solar system, because we're on the short end of the elliptical, right, as we pass through the galactic center. So you're getting more of these, he called them gravitational waves from the sun, that are causing more friction and disturbance on not just our planet, but the other planets as well, right? And so how does that factor into what you're saying? Where does the black hole principle come into weather changes? And he said that that's to, and I just want to say this right up front, that has to be separated out from the toxic effects of what we're spewing out on this planet. Climate change is much more complex, and it appears to be cosmic in great part as well. So comment as you will on this.
Yes, I don't for a second, please don't think for a second that anybody watching, that I'm saying, great, we've got endless oil, let's burn lots of it, because like you're saying, it's those toxic effects of that are not going to go away, you know, air pollution, everything like that. So I'm not advocating that for a second. But yeah, we need a better understanding. Now, you know, when you don't understand the basic things about climate, like how hurricanes happen, and you know, again, have a look at the scientists, it's so convoluted. And you know, if you look it up, do hurricanes have lightning, you can still find some references that say of course they don't, because they're not produced in that way. But we know that they do, because we can see them, and now we're seeing gammaray. So this is some of the basic stuff we don't understand about our own climate and our own weather.
Yeah.
So it's, how can you make these climate predictions? But what I think is happening is that I mean, you know, it's really interesting what he said, but I would also say that every single center of every single black hole is the same. It's this infinite consciousness. And that's the part that I didn't say at the beginning, that the perception horizon is the boundary of our universe, because it's the limit of our three-dimensional consciousness. And so it's not the limit of the universe, and beyond the perception horizon is all the dark matter and dark energy that, you know, the astrophysicists don't understand what it is. Someone just won a Nobel Prize for it, but they don't understand what it is. So it's a really interesting situation. But what we see around us, the stars, planets, galaxies, everything, is, including ourselves, is just 0.1% of the universe. So the idea that we know what's going on is ludicrous. So most of the universe is beyond this perception horizon at the speed of light. So consciousness is very, very much embedded in the black hole principle. And so the center of the black hole is the same no matter which black hole you're talking about, whether that be a center of a galaxy or an atom or even your chakra. It's the same center. It's that unmovable stillness. It's literally the eye of the storm, and it's the same eye of the storm. So what I think is changing is that connected consciousness, that ultimate consciousness at the center. And as that is going through maybe cycles, that's changing the black hole behavior at every single level. So we will get more eruptions, we will get more solar flares, we will get more you know, maybe geysers on Io, and Jupiter lost its strike recently, and you know, so you're getting all these fluctuations. And as this consciousness itself changes, you're going to get changes. Now, one of them I think, as I said, the oceans of the Earth, come from the center of the Earth itself. So as the black hole principle works, you end up getting emissions of water, and that's why the oceans are replenishing themselves. We had fairly major incidents in the past where we had what's known as great floods. And I believe as the consciousness changed of not only the planet, but all, because every single black hole is connected, it emitted a load of water. And if you look at the Bible, it said it rained and also water came up from the deep. So, it actually had an injection of water, which created really quite a different world afterwards. If you look at the ancient texts, they talk about antediluvian and post-diluvian. So this is where we had a major climate change event. The black hole itself of the Earth, the consciousness itself, changed and then gave this huge emission of water, and that's what caused what we call the biblical flood. Or there were, seems to be quite a few floods going back in the ancient.
Yes.
Obviously, you've interviewed quite a lot of people on this, Regina, I know.
I have. Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving this into the notion that behind all of it is it's all being organized, driven through the process of through consciousness. And so, as you said earlier on, which I think is really interesting, you have the same force that's driving the black hole phenomena, but it can literally apply itself to create elements as needed in a given universe, a given solar system, even in our human bodies, the Earth itself. It seems that whatever this creative organizing force is, it can take the basis of the elements we have and create whatever it is we need, which means that life is constantly replenishing itself. Life throughout the universe is constantly replenishing with the elements, combining them as needed. Just like you'd have to tell me, the original need to create, say, fossil fuels and coal on this planet and the various ways they've been used by the Earth itself and by humans throughout history, for example. Who knows? It's a mind that we can't even begin to understand, but I find this fascinating. Everything starts with the same thing, and it can be applied to create what's needed into whatever dimension of physicality in these physical realms as needed. So one of the things I thought of is if we have this production of water at the center of black holes, and our body is made of atoms, which at the center of each atom is a black hole, then could we, for example, become breatharians, as some people claim they have been, because our body is going to simply create the elemental nutrients and water needed to sustain our lives. You see what I'm saying?
I absolutely agree with you. I think that is another thing, and we have this production of water that we do every day. We call it just metabolic water, that it comes out of the metabolic process of our body. But what if that's coming from that black hole principle process? So we don't have to drink whatever 8 glasses of water a day. That's totally a misnomer, because we do make some of it. So where's that coming from? So you then have to look and think, well, it's coming from this process. And what if we got really good at this process? Would we need to drink anything at all, you wonder?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, people who have this conscious control, you have this, avatars throughout the ages who may even know how to go beyond the speed of light. So if they're able to take their matter and antimatter and turn that consciously into light, then they can move their consciousness itself and their awareness beyond the speed of light, because a neutrino can go faster than the speed of light. The law that Einstein said is that nothing with mass can go faster than the speed of light. So although you can't take your physical body, if you can transmute your physical body, and this is what the avatars and the sages throughout the ages have been doing in deep meditation, then you can transcend in a way that's more integrated into other realms. We all of us can take our consciousness into other realms. So yes, we're moving from this idea that everything was created 15 billion years ago, the party's over, we're not special, nothing is special, to this idea that the universe is continuously creative. And that's borne out. This isn't just talking, in a fanciful way. The very evidence that was supposed to have proved Big Bang, which is the cosmic microwave radiation, which you might have heard of, or cosmic CMB, cosmic microwave background. Now, that was discovered and Nobel Prizes have been given out. And so you have this microwave background that's always there. And, it was supposed to show something that had happened 15 billion years ago. Therefore, it shouldn't have any patterns that are to do with current structures. But we see that there are fluctuations in the microwave background that are to do with structures now. So what's going on? Well, as I said earlier, microwaves come out of black holes. So the cosmic microwave background is not 15 billion years ago. It's being created in every moment.
Yes.
So even the very evidence that's supposed to prove Big Bang disproves it.
Exactly. Yes, I love your work, and I love that general message that this is a constantly generative process, life itself. And so now you teach a course that's fascinating because it takes the black hole principle into the implications and uses and understanding of our everyday life. And I was hoping you would tease us with just a couple of these, because when we've talked about before, but I think for those who haven't heard it, people find it endlessly fascinating and actually very hopeful. And that is the notion of antimatter and reverse time. So I'd like you to just share a little bit, tease us about that a bit. And then also the subject of our chakras as black holes, as constantly emanating, being programmed with information and then emanating energy, more information. You tell us. Can we talk about those two things?
Yes. So the course is called Simply Divine, and I wanted to do something that was really easy to understand. It takes you all the way from the quantum physics level and understanding that and the applications of that, the science of consciousness, all the way to how to really live this black hole life. What does this sort of black hole principle mean for you? So one of the things I said earlier is that when you get to the edge of a black hole, when a photon, gets to the edge of a black hole, that's also two really, then it splits into the matter and the counterpart, the mirror image, the antimatter. Now the matter part has got a forward timeline, as you will see a little child growing into an adult. But the antimatter part, which is its mirror image, you see the opposite timeline. So that's an adult going into a child. Now that's the c² region, the speed of light squared. So the two coexist in slightly different regions to each other, but ultimately they are just two parts of the light. And that light is the part that's all in the eternal now. That's the part that's out of space and time. So but what we are experiencing is the forward timeline. So the three zones are utterly linked. So we experience in our consciousness a child going to an adult. But guess what? In order for there to be an eternal now, there's got to be some part of the universe where that cancels out. So the three are in existence. It's just we are aware of the forward timeline. So we also can become aware of the negative timeline as well. So that's not negative in a bad way. It's just it's going from forward to backwards. So that's where the future has already happened in the c² region. And you might be thinking, oh, I don't like that. Where the future's already happened? Where's my choice? Well, the choice is at the level of beyond the speed of light. So we as beings are multidimensional, yes, and we can span all of it, the antimatter, the matter, and the beyond speed of light level. So it's from the beyond the speed of light level that we are, as our higher selves, as it were, so look and go, right, what lessons do I need to learn in this incarnation or this series of incarnations? And putting in all of the lessons that we need to learn into these timelines so that we experience what we need to experience. So what happens is we start to, on our journey, get aligned with that part of us that's beyond the speed of light, and that's when we move into this flow with this instant manifestation and just, understanding and feeling aligned. And that's when we realize that we have already created everything. And then it's a completely different, instead of the law of attraction, the way it's taught, is often it's all about you doing from your C region, your electron area, the part of matter, or otherwise known as ego self, really, where you're sitting and going, I want this and I want that. And that's fine. It will work for a certain amount of time. And then you get to a point where you surrender, and you're surrendering to the point where, actually, I've created all of this. And when you start to get into that and start to realize the science behind that, the C and C squared region, then you can actually relax into it and understand a bit more of what's going on. And instead of going, how can I change my reality? Going, why did I create this reality? What's the lesson in this?
Absolutely. What is the highest potential in it? What is it I could possibly have chosen this for in terms of my own expansion, learning, and evolution? And I agree with you. And it's interesting because there you're talking really, in common parlance, you might be talking about the soul, which certainly transcends space, time, and this perception horizon. And so we're making these decisions at a very high level, very conscious level, for what's needed on a soul level to gain in this lifetime, to learn in this lifetime, or transform, whatnot. And so I love that idea, because then we can look at it practically, and it takes away victimhood of any kind, even though we sometimes choose some really harsh experiences to learn from. And I think that's where people get a lot of the relief out of the notion of reverse time.
Yes, exactly. And these, as you say, these aren't unique teachings to me. What I'm talking about is giving that scientific framework.
Yes.
So you understand from the black hole perspective how this all fits together. So we talk in the course, we talk about living from C squared. So you're living from this allowing of your future to unfold, the future you've already chosen. And so you still make decisions, but you know that every single decision you make is a decision you've already made, and that is always going to be the right one. And there's just amazing liberation in that. So ironically, some of the law of attraction can be a bit, the way it's taught normally is, why did you manifest that? Oh, you're not a good manifester, and all this sort of stuff. But once you come into this black hole framework, and what we do in the course is explain just why it's operating at every single level of the universe, your emotions even, every single situation you're in, you're collapsing a matter and antimatter into light, just like John DeMartini has said. Now you've got a black hole cosmology framework as well as a quantum framework for why that's happening. So he did some great work, and he really started to really connect the matter and the antimatter with emotions. So you've got that. You've also got, and for the first time, an understanding. And I even interviewed Harry Oldfield, and he is a professor who has developed this method of actually looking at light interference patterns, and sometimes he can pick up things which seem to be higher dimensional. And he didn't know what chakras were, and he started to scan and found all these with his PIP equipment.
Yes.
He started to find all these chakras, and he didn't know what they were. And so that's a wonderful story, because it shows someone who's objective, who wasn't looking for them, and he found these things. So what are they? What are the chakras? Well, now we see the same sort of pattern. You see the sort of spiral. We even see them giving off light that Fritz Albert Pop calls them, yes, biphoton emissions. Yes. And he also realized that they are, in their breathing. A healthy person has fluctuations of light. Light is a whole language in biology that hasn't been fully explored. Harry Oldfield again did some wonderful work on Daphnia and the little creatures, and showing that the these ripples of light that go across the Daphnia. It's just amazing. So there is a whole language of light that we use as well. So off our own bodies, we have these pulsings of light, so this is the sort of black hole principle in action, the winding and unwinding of the DNA spiral. It spirals all the way down. So once you understand that we're part of this continuous creation in our chakras, in our atoms, think about the atom and the way that the electron goes up and down the electron shells, and you have this antimatter hole. Paul Dirac talks about started to talk about the antimatter, and he was another Nobel Prize-winning physicist for it. And then they eventually found antimatter in cosmic rays, and he won the Nobel. So he was the first one to realize that as the electron is paired with the positron, the antimatter, inside the atom itself. And think about radioactivity, where you have an electron moving fast out of a heavy nucleus. So you've got the same sort of patterns that are going all the way down throughout reality. Once you start to just see, oh, yeah, actually that's the same sort of signature, then you realize it's the same pattern all the way down. And probably levels that we're not aware of either, because it is infinite.
I have to go back and watch my interview with Harry Oldfield and Fritz Albert Popp. It's been so many years. A lot of times I'll take it in, put pieces together, and then move on to the next subject, because by nature of my work, I'm a dilettante. But over time, you start putting all these stories together. And that's what I love about talking to you, is because you draw it all together for us. And what you've put together, I think, is just going to be a gift that it was gifted you, that's going to continue giving for probably decades, if not centuries ahead. So any final comments on this before we go? Because people can come take your course, right? Online? Is that how it works?
Yes, the Simply Divine, which puts it all together and helps you to understand it from the perspective of what it means for you, how to live the black hole principle way, as it were. I've got a special offer for anybody watching this as well. So if you go to drmanjir.com, so drmanjir.com/SD for Simply Divine, you'll see all the information there. And if you click through to the shopping cart and put in the coupon code Regina, which is so nice.
Cool. Thank you. That's a nice gift for everybody.
You'll see, and you can choose your own. You can choose US dollars, or if British pounds if you want, or euros, just from the drop down. And you can also put in the coupon code Regina. You'll get 25% off, cool. And that's good to the end of 2019, which is the year that we're filming this. So if you want to join us on Simply Divine, you also get the Conscious Science Club as well for a year, which is where we all hang out from all over the world. And, you'll get all of this stuff. So you'll be entered into a special membership site. And, even just that Conscious Science Club alone, where you can actually talk about all this stuff, is just so cool for us to gather every month in that. So, you'll get the course, you'll get the Conscious Science Club. And so use that coupon code Regina, and
and we can all become black hole geeks with you. I love it.
And if you, as I said, if you want to go to that article as well, that's drmanjir.com/fossil. Got all the science, got all the data of the latest things. But we talk about that in the Conscious Science Club as well. So if you want to come and hang out with us on that, that'd be very cool.
I love it. Well, Manjir, thank you so much, because you're in England right now, so it's getting late your time. I really appreciate your staying up to talk with us, and I look forward to whatever the next thing is that's going to arise from your visionary, multidimensional mind. Thanks for everything, Manjir.
Oh, thank you so much for chatting with me today, and for believing in me all this time. I know, really do appreciate it.
I've known you a lot of years now. We've been to each other's homes, and I just constantly am amazed at what you come up with. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being your brilliant genius self. Okay, everybody. So again, it's Dr. Manjir, drmanjir.com, and you can go to the various references she was talking about. Also, I first started going down her rabbit hole years ago when she wrote the book punk science. That's how we met initially about 15 years ago. So if you haven't read Punk Science, it's definitely worth a read, because that's where she really introduces the black hole principle. So until next time, thank you for joining us here on reginameredith.com.